What's up, guys? It's been a while since I've been here, right? I think it's been over a year. Um, and at first, I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna start doing this again, and I'll start talking about fitness or whatever not." And then I was like, "No, you know what? There's enough fitness channels out there. I mean, I'll be more than happy to take your questions about that, but that's not where my heart is at." So in this video, I'm actually just gonna tell you about my experience as a trans guy and what my life is like. So I'm gonna start from the beginning, right? The beginning of my story starts in Panama City, Panama, about 2 o'clock in the morning. I was born to two parents, well, not obviously, right? And so the on the day that I was born, the doctor picks me up and slaps me on my butt, and I make one sound, and I go right back to sleep. I was born sleeping. Um, and I think the reason why I was born sleeping is maybe even at that time I knew something was terribly wrong, right? So, and whatever. Now, I go about my day or about my life, and in Panama, where I grew up, or not where there, where I spent the most of my early childhood, right? I did things that normal kids do at that age, right? And so, except normal boys, I guess. I shot down birds with slingshots. I played in the rain with my cousins. I climbed trees. I spent a lot of time outside, and I was I hated dresses even at that point. And one of my favorite things to wear was this like PJ set that my mom got me, because it was a pants set, and I really enjoyed it. Um, but then by the age of like 6 or 7, my life was very different. My parents moved to California, LA, Long Beach, and at that time I still continued to do the things that I thought were fun. I caught tadpoles, I rode my bike, I played video games. I read a lot of books actually. I started reading at a very young age, um, and I never really liked playing with Barbies or anything like that. I played with like He-Man and stuff like that, and that none of this is really acquired to gender. Um, I didn't really. I knew that certain things made me really uncomfortable, but I wasn't really aware of it. You know, I didn't become staunchly aware or like in my face aware until I was 7 years old. And at that time, at 7 years old, my father and my mother had gotten back together, and we moved over to Miami, where my dad was going to become the praise and worship leader of a 2,000 member church, and was also the principal of my school. Had his own radio program. There was a lot of things going on in my father's life that involved him in the Christian community. And all of a sudden, I started to become really aware of my gender and that it was wrong because I didn't feel the gender that they were telling me that I had to act like. But I also knew that there would be great repercussions. And so I was quiet. I learned to be quiet. I learned to hide. Um, I remember at 7 years old kind of feeling like, man, I'm in the wrong body. And knowing that that was something that was ill conceived and that I had to be quiet about because the people in my life at that time were very boys act this way, girls act this way. I went to a Christian school in which I had to wear a uniform, right? So the girls wore this uniform and the boys wore that uniform, and I didn't feel good in that uniform. So time moves on, right? I continue to read. I'm very aware of my surroundings. I have an awareness that most kids don't have. Uh, and I am constantly labeled a rebel because I'm naturally masculine. Like it's my nature to be this way. I wanted to play drums at the time, or I started to play drums, and now it was, oh my god, well, girls don't play drums, and yada yada yada, and so I had to fight for that. I was also just kind of just always labeled a rebel, right? So at 15, I'm sorry, at 13, I finally got respected as a drummer in my church, and I started to become very very active in my church. And I still had all these feelings inside of me. I still was very attracted to women, and I still felt very masculine. And any point of my life that I got to express that masculinity without too much repercussion, you could damn best bet I was doing it. And it was just constant reminders. I remember this one episode, which doesn't really have to do with my gender, but just to kind of show you the way I was treated. Um, I had a friendship with this girl, so one of the girls in church, and it was Sunday morning, and my mom was like, "You can't talk to that little girl anymore," and I was like, "Why not?" Because her parents think that you are after their daughter, and I was like, "Oh," so they yeah. So my mom told me to stay away, and I remember feeling like, wow, I can't just even be like I can't be myself. And I had many more instances like that in which I was told to stay away, or I remember one time it was me. I'm actually my current girlfriend at the time, but I guess I looked at her the wrong way, and I was in the office with two elders. And what I find really funny about all these instances where they pulled me aside, they never put my parents there. It was always me and an elder and somebody that they thought that I had a crush on or something of the rather sort. So at 17 years old, I was tired. I was mentally tired. I was physically tired. I was spiritually tired. And I was tired because I felt like I was constantly having to defend myself, uh, second thinking what I'm doing. It gets kind of hard to be in the closet after a while. And so I was done fighting, and I went on a missionary trip to try to, I guess, find God. Because I didn't want to be what I was at the time. I wanted to be I wanted to be normal, right? Or else I actually I didn't even care about being normal. I just wanted to like live peacefully, like having to without having to excuse myself for just being myself. And so I went on this trip, and long story short, I just got the worst treatment ever. Like the worst treatment, and I don't want to get into details, but I've never felt in my life so unwanted and uncomfortable, and my I was so messed up at the time. And so I came back from this trip, and the leaders of the trip were upset that I left early, or they thought that I left early. They wanted me to stay for a year. I said 6 months. At first, the agreement was for 6 months, and then when I didn't want to stay for the year, they went back and told my church or everything, and kind of ruined me. So I couldn't go back to that, and I guess that was an alleviation. But it also opened up Pandora's box, right? So I came back, and I didn't want to do the things that I used to do anymore because they weren't helping me, and I didn't want to be in that environment because it was a constant like denial of myself and my authenticity. So I went out, and I had a current girlfriend, and I broke up with the girlfriend that I had at the time because you know it was getting tired putting her in a bad spot, and we remained friends. But then I met a new girlfriend, and I had no connection to a higher power at that time, and I felt that the God that had been preaching to me didn't love me. and thought that I was an abomination and I was evil and all these things that I no longer believe. But at that time I did, and so for years, and I mean years, I would go on alcoholic binges. I would just drink myself to fucking oblivion. I did a lot of drugs. I did a shit ton of drugs, and I would say that the turnaround started basically with me beginning to bodybuild. Um, and the trainer that I met at that time, and he was the first positive person in my life. What I mean by positive person, he just was full of love. You know, he's like just loved his wife, loved his kids. Like I never heard anything like that in a while, and it was nice. And he given, whether he knows it or not, kind of gave me the tools to kind of break out of the skin that I was in. You know, and it took a long time, really, and it took a couple more really bad relationships. And but I started working as a trainer in a gym, and I lived my life basically as an androgynous person. And I had started competing and stuff like that. So when you start to compete, your body fat goes really low, and you look really masculine and whatever not. And so I was very comfortable with this certain masculinity, but other people weren't, and I was getting kicked out of bathrooms and just having a lot of shitty ass experiences. So fast forward, um, I'm on my way to work, and I was talking to my best friend, and she's like, "You know what? You're really weird, and I think that you're either transgender or intersex, and you need to go check this shit out. How long can you keep living like this?" And I was like, "Whoa, what are you talking about?" And so I researched it, because that's what I do. I research it, you know. And I found a therapist that was not a gatekeeper. I went to her name is Carol Clark, by the way, and so I went to her, and we kind of discovered that I was transgender, right? Yay, awesome sauce. So I then had to swallow that pill, and that was a hard pill for me to swallow because like the things that I heard about trans people weren't very good. But I'd seen so many trans men at that time online that had transitioned and that were living a decent life, and so I decided to take the leap. The first year of transitioning or starting to take that leap was rather tough in certain senses. My family was you know, I remember the day I had to tell my mom, my dad, I took him to therapy with me, and my mom busted out into tears, and my dad was like, "Oh, well, I've known since he was 4 years old," and I was like, "What the fuck, Rick? Seriously, like, if you knew, like, just say something." Like, why make me go through so many years of fucking pain? Like, that is insane. Like, why would you do that to someone? Anyway, so I was really upset at my dad. My mom felt like we had kept her out of the loop. And so I decided to, you know, kind of ease them into it. And I did. And over after a year, my parents had been very good with my transition. And then 2 years into it, I decided to get clean. And so to in 2 more days, it'll be 4 years sober. It'll be 1 year, a little over a year top surgery. It'll be many breakups and many, well, not really, 3 breakups now. Um, in the job that I've been at for the last 5 years, it'll be looking in the mirror and liking what I see, staring back at me. I'm not going to say that my life is easy because there are parts of my life that I still find to be tough. But that is the story of my transition. And I'm leaving obviously a lot more out of it. This fucking shit's getting really long. And so this will be my channel. It will be my story and my experience as me. And hopefully you hearing my experience as me will help you. Good night. peace and love and many blessings.